You don't want the bars way sticking up, especially once I do the trim. But you don't want to dig, you know, way into the sole. So you kind of just bring them down a little bit. These flags look pretty good. Sometimes I'll clean these little flaps off, especially in our climate where they, you know, if this were a desert horse, I'd probably leave them alone. But in our climate, they want to get thrush under there quite a bit. Then bring the heels where I want them. And this heel was higher than that one, so this side won't need as much, of course, and that's just a conformational thing. And usually, what we say is about a rasp's width will, you know, be good. If you go below, you tend to get too short. If you go way higher than that, you tend to start stressing the walls, but it varies, you know. Of course, some horses might need a little more, a little less, and some can handle more or less. With him, I'd actually, especially if you get boots that fit him, go a little bit, just a hair lower, and then bring this flare in more, because you can see where he's kind of wanting to stretch this white line out, which, you know, the rings on his foot were kind of coinciding with. And so until he grows nice and tight white line, I don't want quite as much pressure on those walls, pulling it apart more and more and more. But for now, we'll just leave him there, since
okay,
we'll see how he does, since you do ride him there a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And I usually start addressing the flare from below before I even put it up on the stand. What you kind of want to aim for is the same width of wall all the way around. You know, you can get an idea that this was about that thick, so that's where the wall wants to be. Whereas like here it's thicker, you know, and I'll show it on the other foot. Maybe I'll even pull my pen out. It's a bit different and better just from the bottom. And then you can also check flare by this. See, like at the toe, he doesn't have a lot because there's no gap here. You stick it there and you're starting to see a little gap. You know, this should be as straight as it is there. And so anything that's not as nice as that, you know, is a flare. So like at the toe, I won't do much because he doesn't need it. But at the walls,
Or like with the draft horses, that's pretty much.
Well, drafts, a lot of it's just flare, but some of it's also, they have more of a spade-shaped foot. You know, they don't have this roundish foot. They have a pointier here, and then it comes out here and goes back in at the heels. So you have to see what's flare and what's not. But also, a lot of them do have flare because they never get proper hoof care, especially from a young age, which is when they need it. And so they're allowed to kind of just splat all over the place. So I'm going to put my roll on. I start with that, and you can see it kind of starts putting a bevel on it. And then I come from the side, add the second layer, and then from the bottom, my third. So just kind of the whole thing bevels around. In the quarters, he wants to jam his quarters up. You want to relieve the quarters a little bit for him. So see how there's now a curve here, because as the foot doesn't get too distracted, they need that, because if it's flat, which how a lot of farriers trim, when they land, there's nowhere for that force to go to except up. And that's why it jams up that coronet band up above the quarters. But if there's a natural cup to it, every time they land, they can do this and that, and that. And so that curve allows that force of landing to dissipate a little, and then as they pick up the foot, the foot arches again. So it's a, there's probably some way in physics to explain that, but it's dissipation of the forces. And so if you keep that arch in there, eventually you'll see how this hairline becomes, from here to the heels, becomes a straight downward slope instead of making this, bump up there. I won't do a ton from up here unless it's really like a rehab case or it's really bad and they really need a lot of flare reduction. Most of my flare thing is just by beveling the sides really well where there is flare, and then it'll grow out if you continue to do that. Every 2 weeks put a good bevel on it. But with him, a little bit of flare reduction like this isn't going to hurt him because he has nice thick walls too. And on a thin-walled horse, I do a lot less. I may not even touch it at all from the top. So again, I'll get the beginning of my bevel on like this. And then, I know, it's distracting, oh boy. And then the next part of the bevel here. And then from the bottom. And then I come in and put in my quarter relief. Depending on how badly jammed up they are is how much I'll do. He isn't horrible, so I'll just do a little bit. On some horses, it's a real obvious arch because they're just, they're like, horribly jammed up. It'll look like this. It'll just go way up here because they've been jammed up for years and years, especially a shod horse, because there really is no energy dissipation when you have a hunk of steel on the bottom versus even a barefoot horse that's trimmed flat can still at least somewhat unflex that foot. Boy. No, later. We'll do that one too. Well, heels are even now. So that's good. I'll take that bar just a hint down. And this is what I call my basic trim, especially on a horse like him that, I have done him in the past, but theoretically I haven't done it before, and back then he wasn't being used. Real basic trim, has some wall up, has some stuff addressed, but not too aggressive. And then I'll see how does the horse go in that. If they're like, oh my god, my feet are like, oh, then I'll go, okay, maybe this horse needs even a little more wall. Or if the horse is going fine and the owner's like, oh yeah, that was fine, they don't care, we'll leave it that way. Or if they have a lot of flare and I think they actually needed a more aggressive trim. This is kind of my average everyday trim. Some bar up, especially because he has relatively healthy bars. They're not laid over, they're not going all the way around his foot. Pretty much left the sole alone. And yeah, he's got just that, 1/8 of an inch or whatever of wall there to help, keep him off the ground so he's not, not way down. But now you can see the profile of the foot, even compared to the other one where you trimmed a little bit, is different. It's quick. But he does want to flare more to the inside and be a little uneven, but we can fix that over time, because you can see how the whole foot wants to kind of go whoop. So I'd keep on top of the inside flare more than the outside, because the outside isn't too bad, and then keep the foot balance. Now, let's see what this. That's about right, lined up. That feels good. Yeah, the heels are where they need to be. We got over that flare. No problemo. Yeah, so if you maintain them in this shape, this is the size you need. If he flares out, you'd probably be in a 1.5 wide. So, again, I'll kind of I don't do much with the frog. I just clean these flaps away so nothing gets trapped under them, but you don't want to take a shipload off or they end up being sore just because their frogs are sore. The bars here are not as high either as on the other foot. So interesting to see how that other foot does over time. And sometimes, you know, like now I'll clean up in here just to make sure none of the bar looks like it's laying over, which it's not. I even find this edge pretty well right here. And his bar here wants to go to there, so I'll actually take this stuff that's too far forward down a little bit. And you can see because of where this crack is here, that's where his bar kind of wants to naturally end. So everything forward of that is too much. So I'll start kind of blending it into the foot. There are trimming theories that are more aggressive and they say, oh, dig it way out and blah, 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 and, you know, take it way down. But unless the horse has major rehab issues, I don't do that. I just kind of blend it into the sole level and call it good right there. Same thing on the other side. This right here is a little extra, so we kind of blend it down to the sole, but leave the top, the upper area that's by his heels, that's his support mechanism. And we don't want to take that way down if there's no reason to. And sometimes you can feel spots that just don't feel right. But so yeah, this foot is much better. He doesn't flare. You know, this white line is tighter too. So it'd be interesting to see why he's doing that on that leg. This foot is much more of a normal foot, you know. And I noticed that yesterday too before the touch-up. So I'm not gonna do much there. But again, you can see, I'll take a little just so it's more obvious, that the hoof, usually in the quarters, is about where your natural thickness will be, is this thick, all right? So you want this thickness all the way around. So up here you can see that it gets wider through there. So, and you know, again, this is not rocket science. A lot of this is more art than anything else, just kind of seeing where flare is. And so, you know, everything that a ways to me would be flare. So you can go and start taking it down after you take away and, you know, and I just do this visually more than anything else, but until you get that eye for it, you can just draw it in. And so you can see how it's starting to get that same width all the way around. So that's one way to figure out where to take what away, flare-wise. Same thing. And I'll now take it away and bring that wall to there. Give or take, then that would be your flare removal from the bottom, and then of course from the top you do a little bit more here or there. So then, the other trick is to see where the foot wants to be. These growth lines generally coincide with, the correct angle from the coronary band, as long as you're not having major laminitis and they're wider at the heel and blah, blah, blah. So you can pick yourself, and if you think they may be lying to you, you can just, draw a line down to here or something and make sure that everything, measures the same. But if not, you can just, if you think they look right, you can just get yourself, that line's almost faded, but you can kind of see it here. Good boy. And then sometimes you can do a boop, 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 all the way down if you're not sure. And then like here's another one right there. And you're probably going to be way better at this because I have very little drawing talent. You have a lot more drawing talent.
Mine's with a mouse, not with a pen.
But, so, here's another way to tell, well, see, this is all straight, and then here, it flares out, right? So, again, I can take this, and I know I don't have to do much at the toe, but I can remove more of that flare. And again, mostly I'm going to do it with a roll here, and I'm going to bevel the side that has the wider, like right at that spot. I might put a bigger bevel because, well, he has more flare there. In the back, there's less, so I'm not going to do as drastically as one. And at the front, he doesn't need super lock because it's not a huge thing either. Of course, like I say, I'll put in my little arch here as well. And you know where to bring your wall flare to. No, don't climb on it. More of a bevel there because that less in front, and I didn't need a lot in front. Less behind because the heel is okay. And then my arch. And it's mainly toe quarter to toe quarter. You can't, like back here, I wouldn't then like bevel away, take this away. So your gauge with these lines is from here to here mostly. And you can see even how on that bottom line that rang true. But I drew the top line just as a more visual key to me to then have something to compare this line to and making sure it was kind of even all the way around.
Neat.
So you can do that on all your horses and kind of use that as a guide. We'll have this big round foot. It's not going to be narrow on the sides. Contracted heeled horses do. And so once they brought out these wides, it was a huge difference. Mind the banging. Good boy. Yeah, he's almost a 1.5 on this foot. So, but the other one, I say it grows differently too. It's more, upright, kind of a high-low, even though he's not really low on this one.